Well, a very warm welcome to my kitchen, and before we start on this month's video where we're looking at packaging and the environment, I thought I'd just make myself a very quick cup of coffee. Now, you could be forgiven, of course, for thinking that packaging manufacturers are the environmental public enemy number one if your entire reading material consisted of the Daily Mail. And we thought this was a really interesting subject to have a detailed look at as communicators, because maybe that's not such a clear story after all. So one of the things I wanted to try and do today was have a look to see what's actually happening in the modern packaging environment. If we take something as innocuous as, say, a milk bottle, how do milk bottles get manufactured, and how do the manufacturers themselves deal with environmental issues? Because there's a bit of a revolution going on when it comes to milk. This, of course, is the traditional method that you would use, a good solid bottle with a nice handle. But there are some new packaging formats which are coming onto the marketplace, and this is one of them that I brought along. It's a jug. And with this particular format, what you get is you get a milk bag, like this. Here's a 2-pint bag. And you take this bag and put it inside this jug. So you clip open the top, you take your bag and you drop your bag inside. And a very well-known supermarket is doing this format at the moment. You pull one corner over the entrance, clip it down, and slam it shut. And that's it. And then you should be able to pour milk without too much of a problem. So what we thought we would do in this film is we thought we'd go out and we would talk to the Packaging Federation, get their views on it, talk to packaging manufacturers to see what they're doing to try and deal with the issues. Currently, about 4.9 million tonnes of packaging is going to landfill, and that's too much. We've got to recycle more of that, and certainly that packaging material should have recycled content. And that's what we're seeing with the old plastic milk bottle. But as well as that, we've got to think about what are the benefits of the packaging material, because at the moment, packaging is being seen as a bit of a whipping boy by the media, as something they have a good go at from an environmental point of view. But without good packaging, far more materials would end up going to waste. At the moment, almost 9 million tonnes of food waste is going to landfill in this country. That's far too much. We have to get that down. And if we tinker with the packaging element inappropriately, we might actually be creating more food wastes than was originally the case. And that's hardly an environmental benefit. So let's have a look and see what we found out when we went out to talk to people about packaging and the environment. So Dick, if I can start by asking you, why do you think packaging gets such a bad press?
Well, I think the problem is that just packaging is just so visible. People see it at the end of life. They see it in their bin. They open up their bin and they say, my God, look at all that packaging. But they don't actually stop to ask themselves why it was there in the first place, because they bought a lot of stuff. Packaging doesn't have a life of its own. We don't sell packaging to consumers. People sell products. Yeah. Products use the packaging as a delivery system. And that's why it's there.
So what types of things do you think we can do to try and change this perception?
It's quite a paradox when you look at the packer fillers, the brands and the retailers who actually utilise our packaging. Their existence depends on the existence of packaging in the first place. It's a feature of modern society. In fact, it's a feature that society couldn't do without. Society couldn't exist without modern packaging. But I think one of the problems is that people are still very, very cautious about being seen to be supporting packaging. And everyone is on the defensive. In fact, it exists to do good things. It actually protects products, it contains them, preserves the product, enhances shelf life. All of those things mean that the actual environmental impact of packaging itself is significantly less than the wastage that it saves. But the real answer is to get the supply chain, the packer fillers and the retailers to talk themselves about the benefits of packaging. It's starting to happen. But if we could get the 1 million+ people who work in the supply chain to be talking in the pubs and clubs and dance halls themselves positively about packaging, that would do far more than any advertising campaign or getting the right stories in the media.
So to many environmental pressure groups, they see plastic packaging as public enemy number one. And maybe that title is extremely unfair, because what we should be doing is looking at the entire environmental impact associated with consumer goods. So what we've decided to do is to come here to Nampak Plastics, one of the country's premier manufacturers of plastic milk bottles, to have a look at the manufacturing process, which at this plant includes the addition of 10% recycled content. Now this is a food preparation area in terms of manufacturing packaging, so I have to use one of the world's greatest levelers to make sure that I keep the environment clean and suitable to the standards that consumers require.
wondered what happens to your recycled milk bottles, some of them end up in here. They get collected, washed, scrubbed, shredded and granulated, transported to a plant like this and get added at a rate of 10% into new clean milk bottles.
And so with a production capacity of 1.1 million bottles every single day, 365 days of the year, including Christmas Day, this facility must be highly efficient and produce a quality product needed by the dairy industry, because that's what we as consumers demand. But as well as that, these days it also has to be environmentally friendly as well. And crucially, with the increasing quantity of recycled content, it's managing to satisfy that criteria. Of course, sometimes plastic packaging is criticised from an environmental point of view. I mean, how do you think plastic packaging performs environmentally?
Well, I think there's a great myth about plastics in general, and plastic packaging in particular, that only in fact 4% of oil is used for plastics, and plastics, because it's a very flexible material, is excellent for making into things like plastic bottles and plastic packaging. And so it's a very small part of oil. It's a very effective way of recycling. When we move on to the recycling market that's happening right now, plastics is a very easily recyclable material, and so it has some real benefits. It's also very light in weight, so if you're comparing, say, packaging in plastics with, let's say, glass, then you're reducing the amount of weight you're transferring around, you're reducing the amount of cost of transport and also carbon that's used in transporting. So it's a very effective, lightweight, flexible material.
But what about the future? Do you think there's a long-term future for plastic milk bottles?
I do. I mean, it's been around for a time. We're working on some developments which enable us to lightweight further. We're working on improving the recycling addition rate from 10% to 20% to 30% and on towards 50%, which we will achieve, I'm quite confident, by 2020. And in the interim, we'll get to 30% by 2015. So there are a lot of positive things about it. And also the other positive thing about it is that milk bottles don't waste the milk inside. We have to remember that when you look at the carbon footprint of a litre of milk, it's about 1,400 grams of carbon, of which the packaging is about 70 to 80 grams. So it's a relatively small part of the percentage of the carbon impact of the milk. It's all about milk not wasting the milk. And the milk bottle is very good at not wasting milk, both in terms of keeping it in the fridge and keeping it cool, but also you can get all the milk out of the bottle. In terms of other packaging formats, you know, cartons and bags, there are some difficulties in relation to that.
Now, of course, to some people, plastic packaging is seen to be a real environmental problem. I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you feel as though the plastic packaging industry is being treated fairly?
I think the plastic packaging industry can stand up for itself and should stand up for itself, and it should market and explain the story of the benefits of plastic packaging. Again, going back to this use of oil, 4 to 5% of oil used for plastic, a very, very small amount. What we've actually got to do is we've got to impact as a country on reducing our carbon footprint in the areas that are important, like transport, like heat, electricity and all the rest of it.
So what conclusions have we come to now we've been out and spoken to the Packaging Federation and been out to see a plastic packaging manufacturer who's actually producing materials today with 10% recycled content? We should always look at this as the whole environmental impact associated with a product, not just the packaging, which seems to be the case at the moment. We must stop constantly bashing packaging, because without packaging of high quality, like places like this generate, we would not be in a position to deliver good quality consumer goods to consumers' homes in a condition which they can use. And that would have far greater impact on the environment overall than simply just looking at the packaging. That is a story worth telling.